Hello everyone, welcome back. So in what may be shocking and unbelievable news, you would never expect from me at all, I bought more books. And so I thought that I would share them with you today. And I'm already in the middle of one. There's one I've been reading off and on, and there's another one that I plan to read very soon, which I forgot to take the tag off of, but will illustrate a point of mine, I suppose. I picked most of them up between Wednesday and Thursday of this week, though, actually. I've been really good about buying books lately. There is a stack of books. There are 6 books that I bought in a series, and for whatever reason, I forgot to show them in my last haul, so I thought that I would just tack them on to the end of this one, and I would do them first, but I think 6 books is quite a lot, and maybe most people won't be very interested in them. But anyway, yeah, let me just get to it here. So the first book is Bigfoot on the Track of the Sasquatch. Oh, it's not going to show up, I don't think. It's all white, but there is a foot, like a footprint right here. That's too bad. It's really neat, actually, the white on white, the footprint. It's on the back, too, but there's a big sticker over that. So this is by John Green. This is actually 2 books in one. I'm currently reading it. I'm really enjoying it, and I will talk about this soon. Whether you believe in Bigfoot or you're very skeptical about Bigfoot, books like this are a lot of fun. I used to find books like this all the time about Bigfoot, about UFOs, sea monsters, strange creatures, and you just don't see these paperbacks like this much anymore. I don't know if that's because they have fallen apart mostly, been thrown away, whatever, or if they are collector's items and people just really hang on to them. But I was really happy to see this, and I'm really enjoying it, actually. And like I said, I'll talk about that more later on. The next one is the 75th anniversary edition of The Lottery and Other Stories by Shirley Jackson, with an introduction by A.M. Holmes. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. I really like Shirley Jackson's writing. I like her short stories. I recently read her collection Dark Tales, and I'm hoping to get to this soon. I don't know if I'll be able to get to it in October. I have a few plans. I actually have a few plans for October that I am thinking of doing. And, you know, this would fit well into October, actually. I just need to see. I don't really make plans, so I am kind of wary of making any plans, but there's something I really want to read in October. A multitude of some things, actually. And we'll just have to see if I get to that or not. I'll talk about that probably in the same video where I talk about Bigfoot, if I remember. So the next book is the Penguin Book of Food and Drink, edited by Paul Levy. And this brings together all sorts of authors, fiction, nonfiction, about food and food from all over the world. Paul Levy apparently is from Lexington, and that's kind of interesting. Robert K. Massey was also born in Lexington. Let's see. So you have a lot of people I've never actually heard of, and then some that I have, like S.J. Perlman, Nelson Algren, Orwell is in this, MFK Fisher. Yeah, so there was a really good 3 pages about cheese, different kinds of cheese and why cheese is awesome, and why there are 2 different kinds of people who love cheese and people who don't, and why people who love cheese are better. So that's about as far as I've actually got into that. I did read, there's a section on that in like not fermented but rotted condiments from 1,000 years ago in Arabia, and that was really very interesting. And the author actually made them, and that reminded me of I think it's called Tasting History with Max Miller, I think. If I got that wrong, I'll put it right here. That's a really interesting channel. He makes all these recipes from the last 1,000 years or so. And recently he did these, it took him 3 years. He made these, they were like balls, but they were made from this dough mixed with sake. And he had to let it sit on his counter for 3 years and ferment. And that was really interesting. He does interesting things like that all the time. This is The Ritual by Adam Nevill. Sorry, I'm sort of rambling off topic, I guess. But I've wanted a copy of this book for years. And I've never actually seen one. Adam Nevill's books are kind of hard to find here where I live. I have found some of his newer books, but The Ritual has eluded me for whatever reason. I've never seen it used, at least. I'm not sure if I saw it new. If I saw it new, it probably cost too much. And anyway, I saw the movie of this years ago. I've been wanting to read the book, and I've been wanting to read several of Adam Nevill's books. I just don't find them. Yeah, so that should be cool. After that, we have Arthur M. Schlesinger Jr.'s The Imperial Presidency, and there he is. This is from 1973. I think this was his reaction to the growing powers of the presidency, particularly war powers, over the 200 years the U.S. had been around. And I think this is his reaction to Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger's illegal bombing of Cambodia during the Vietnam War. So this is sort of in the Watergate period. It's before the resignation of Richard Nixon in '74. And I think that came out in the Pentagon Papers, Daniel Ellsberg's Pentagon Papers. So I've actually read quite a bit about Richard Nixon and Watergate and all that. I don't know why I haven't talked about it. I think that I have interests that wax and wane, and they've been on the wane ever since I have been doing my channel. But I've read quite a bit about all of that. Vietnam, Richard Nixon, yeah. Here is one I've wanted to read for years and years and never had, and it is Weird Kentucky. And this is a really interesting book about just weird things that have happened in the state of Kentucky, which is where I live, and weird things you might see on the side of the road. There is a giant Louisville Slugger at their factory in Louisville. What is that? There is a giant obelisk in Fairview. You have legends and interesting people. Hunter Thompson. I actually bought this in Stanford. And so one of the pages in this is the Stanford alien abduction, where 3 ladies were supposedly abducted by UFOs. And if I remember right, there was a UFO that was chased by U.S. military airplanes over Stanford. This is in the 70s. So I've never really actually looked into that. You can look up interviews online. There are several on YouTube. It's just kind of interesting, but there are all kinds of things. I've just kind of been flipping through it, and I've already learned several things about the state and weird things on the side of the road I'd really like to go see. I've wanted to read that for years. I don't know why I've never got a copy before. And this next one is kind of odd, I guess. I mean, it's kind of odd in that I would want it, I think. I was just so impressed by it. It is the Journal of the Century. And this is a collection of articles and papers and artwork from the Ladies' Home Journal, from its founding up until 1976. And I really couldn't put it down. It's really, really interesting, and it has all kinds of articles and stories by very famous writers, by very interesting people. Eleanor Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt, Herbert Hoover, I think. Calvin Coolidge is in this. I think George Orwell. some of the more famous journalists. There are quite a lot of pictures of, well, first of all, there's Mary Astor. I believe that's Mary Astor. And Edward VIII, that's I guess when he was supposed to be in the transition to being Edward VIII. Never quite happened. I guess he was technically king, and then of course he abdicated. I think it's because he didn't want the job and was kind of a layabout myself, but I don't know if that's the truth. I have to read more about him to find out. There are the Kennedys in London. There was a picture, though, when I opened this. So this goes all through the Kennedy period, up into Vietnam. There is Grace Kelly. I really like these magazine collections like this. And I'm sure that in the earlier years, the late 1800s, into the 10s and the teens and 20s, I bet a lot of that is kind of maudlin and sappy. There are the Churchills, and that's a story or an article by John Steinbeck. I was just fascinated by this, and I put it down and I said, I don't really need that, but I just couldn't stop thinking about it, and it was a whole $1.59, and so it's not like I'm out a great deal of money, and I do want to read big chunks of this. There's a picture I'm looking for in particular, and it's the one that sort of sold me on it. And well, of course you can never find the picture you want to find when you're looking for it, can you? Oh, there it is. So there is Marlene Dietrich. And so what you don't know that I know is that on that wall right there is a big poster of Marlene Dietrich. And I opened this up and I thought, gee, she looks familiar. And it's because I've been looking at her every now and then for 10 years. No particular reason. I don't think I've ever seen one of her movies. I just liked the poster. There was a time when I was collecting like silver prints. Not actual silver prints, but reproductions of silver prints. I find them fascinating. There is Sophia Loren and Paul Newman. So anyway, I don't know. I just found this really, really interesting in their covers of apparently at some point it went from being Ladies' Home Journal to just the journal. But I don't know. I just really like that. And the last one, the last one from this month is a book. I just kind of saw it sitting down there. I didn't know what it was, but it's Ghosts Along the Mississippi. And I have made it a habit to look at these books. When you see a book like this, look at it, look inside it, because you never know what's going to be inside it. I know it looks bland and boring, but that's because it's missing its cover. And this is, this husband and wife went around photographing these crumbling plantation houses in the American South. And this would have been in the 30s and 40s. And I actually have a book that I've had for many years, which is, it is like a government book. Like during Franklin Roosevelt's administration, they sent photographers around to take a survey of buildings all over the country. And it's not nearly this size, but they are photos from the 30s of these decaying buildings. I'm just fascinated. I love decaying buildings, abandoned structures. I always have, and I really, like I said, I really like silver prints, and I really like architecture, and so a book like this really appeals to me, even though when you are looking through a book like this, you have to remember that these buildings, their opulence, their grandeur, they were built through slavery, through oppression, through pain and tears and suffering, and through, you know, the superiority of these people who thought that they could own human beings. And So that does sort of, I mean, you have to remember that every time you see beautiful columns like that. I don't know if I can, it's kind of hard to maneuver a book this large on screen. You have to remember what built them and what allowed them to be built. But it's just fascinating stuff. Just, I'm guessing that most of these places have probably been torn down or burnt down, or very few of them have actually been restored, and they do carry that taint, that scar on our nation's history. Okay, so the next 6 are all like Garbagest material. They are Deathlands books, and someone was kind enough to mark which ones are which. So there are over 140 of these, I know, maybe 160, and these are all earlier novels in the series. So we have Dectra Chain. So what these books are about is that there is a small band of people who have grown up in the aftermath of a giant nuclear war, and this is about 100 years down the future, and there are mutated animals and pirates and outlaws and all kinds of crazy stuff going on. It's kind of like Fallout, if you've ever played Fallout, and that really appeals to me because I always really loved Fallout. And so this is number 7, Dectra Chain. It's kind of a strange name. They go to a place on the coast, the East Coast, where people are whaling, I guess, and dealing with giant sharks, apparently. And there are pirates and all kinds of crazy stuff. And they jump through these portals from place to place, and they never know what they're going to find. They never know where they are. Here's Northstar Rising. So this one reminds me, there's a vault in Fallout New Vegas where so all the vaults are different, and in this vault they were doing like agricultural experiments, biological experiments on like insects and things, and the insects got really, really big, and the people also came down with this well, they wound up like Stephen King in what was that movie, the one based on the Creepshow, where he turns into the green plant guy. So the people turned into these green plants over time, and you go in there and you're trying to figure out where all these people went, right? And then you figure out where they went. And so this is kind of the same thing, giant mantises, and not the same thing exactly. I mean, it's not the same thing, but they jump to a place where they have been doing these biological experiments in the past, and they got out of hand, and now there are giant insects and plants and things. That'll be pretty cool. This is Red Equinox. It takes place in Moscow. And one of the most violent books I ever read was a Deathlands that took place in eastern Russia and Alaska. It was called, it wasn't Crater Lake. There's one called Crater Lake, but it was called, it'll tell me right here, Red Holocaust. It was incredibly violent. I don't know if that one will be. Here is Time Nomads. They all have these neat wraparound covers, and they did that up for the first like 60 books or so, and then I guess they couldn't afford the expense anymore. Here is Latitude Zero. This is the 12th book in the series. And Seedling, the 13th. And this takes place in New York, and there are alligators. Everybody knows there's alligators in the sewers of New York. So I actually have some of these already. I have some of the earlier ones and the later ones. And the later ones all get these generic looking covers, really. I've been wanting to read the earlier ones. And the earlier ones are somewhat in order. They're not all in order, like you can read some of them, but there is a storyline going on, at least into the first 15 or so, from what I understand, and it may go further than that. But I think that is sort of the extent of where I've read at the moment. And they are written by different people. Some of them are really good, some of them are not. I'll just show the covers again here. It's one of those series where there's a house name, James Axler, and then they are written by other authors. And so they all bring their unique voice and talents to these books. And some of them get really wild and really violent, like I said. So that is a project I would like to do. I would like to read those books in order. I don't have all of them. There were 40 or 50 of them at least at the bookstore, and they were all $2 a piece. These were all $2 a piece, and I had to stop myself from buying a whole bunch of them. So I just bought the earliest ones they had. And I'm sure I probably missed out on some of them because there were so many that they split them between like a men's adventure section, which is kind of small, and then some of them were in clearance, and I bet, people had picked over them and bought some of them. Anyway, that is my book haul. And I will see if I can do a pyramid. This book, Ghosts on the Mississippi, or Ghosts Along the Mississippi, is actually really heavy, even though it's thin. It's a good workout, though. It's a good balancing exercise. I don't know if I can get these Deathlands books on top of there. Probably not. I may have to take those off. I forgot to mention that the Deathlands were actually written from the late 80s into relatively recently. So there we go. There is my book haul. I forgot to mention this, but I'm probably going to start the ritual today, reading the ritual today. And today is Friday, the 26th. Okay, so I want to thank you for joining me. This has gone on for quite a while, and I'll see you next time.